Hey everyone, if you're just joining, we'll get started in a couple of minutes. If you want to maybe introduce yourselves in the chat, maybe with your name and where you're from, that would be awesome. We'd love to know who's joining for today's event. Very excited to have you here. Also, in case this your default setting sends all messages to all panelists, you can change that to all panelists and attendees to make sure that you're sending your messages to everyone who's attending today. And if you're just joining, welcome again. Really excited to have you here. We'll get started in a couple of minutes, so feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Alrighty, well, I think we will go ahead and get started. If you are just joining, feel free to keep introducing yourselves in the chat. Really excited to see the global audience so far. Let me start sharing my screen. So hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Pooja, and I'm on the Filecoin team. And this is the kickoff event for the Space Race 2 Slingshot competition. We're super excited to have all of you here to tell you a little bit more about what Slingshot is, how you can participate, some of the really exciting rewards that we have in store for you. So really looking forward to diving into the details. But first, I wanted to briefly just congratulate everyone, the entire Filecoin ecosystem, on a really successful Space Race 1. As most of you probably know, over the last several weeks, we've seen the Filecoin mining community bring staggering amounts of storage capacity to the Filecoin decentralized storage network. Over the course of the competition, we saw more than 230 petabytes of storage capacity onboarded throughout the course of Space Race 1 by more than 360 miners from around the world. And as of a few hours ago, I just checked, and it looks like the network is about to cross 300 petabytes of storage capacity on the testnet, which is kind of incredible. As Juan mentioned earlier this week, this is in many ways a historic event and the largest decentralized storage network that has ever been created. So we're living in some pretty exciting times right now, and really, really proud to be a part of this movement. Earlier this week, we had the great honor of celebrating the teams in the Space Race closing ceremony, and also in the final Space Race report. So we'll send out the links to these. These are on YouTube, but if you haven't gotten a chance to page in just the awesome final results of this competition and how it all ended up shaking out, I highly recommend that you check out these videos. It's pretty exciting to see. So Space Race 1 was a huge result for the entire Filecoin ecosystem, and we're really excited to keep this momentum going with SR2 Slingshot. So with this competition, our main goal is to work with the Filecoin storage client and developer communities to accomplish a few main goals. As you probably know, the way this competition is structured, we're really excited to onboard massive amounts of real, valuable, and usable data to the Filecoin network, and to make it usable and explorable by others in the ecosystem as well. As part of this, we're looking to see a lot of really creative and inspiring applications and UIs that are built on top of the data that's being stored to the network. We'd like to stress test Filecoin data storage and retrieval flows. And of course, all participants in this competition will be earning massive Filecoin rewards in the process. During today's kickoff, we'll cover a number of topics. We'll start with a bit of the motivation and vision behind this competition, a whirlwind tour through the Filecoin ecosystem. We'll talk a little bit about what to expect over the next 3 weeks. Andrew from Textile is going to tell us about how to use textile technologies in your projects in Slingshot. We'll cover rewards and prizes for the Slingshot competition. And then finally, the various workshops, events, and programming throughout the course of the next 3 weeks and how you can get help. We'll also have a closing presentation from Juan Benet, the founder of Protocol Labs and the Filecoin project as well, to remind us about why we're all here and kind of the opportunity that we have with the Slingshot competition. So with that, before we dive into the details and how the competition will be structured, I'd like to introduce Colin Evran, who's the ecosystem lead for the Filecoin project, to provide an overview of the motivation and vision behind SR2 Slingshot and why it's a particularly good time for you to participate in the competition and join the Filecoin ecosystem.
Thanks, Pooja. I'm going to see, can you guys see my screen here and hear me okay?
Sure can.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Colin, but my friends call me Proto Colin, and I'm the ecosystem lead for the Filecoin project. I wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone joining us on the call today, and for all the developers and entrepreneurs participating in the Filecoin ecosystem. I wanted to take a few minutes today and focus on the incredible broader momentum in the ecosystem and highlight the developers, the organizations, the applications, the projects, and the people that are actively building on the network today. So first, I'll touch briefly on why the Filecoin project exists. Filecoin's mission is to create a decentralized, efficient, and robust foundation for humanity's information. We truly believe that humanity's most valuable resource is information, and we are so incredibly passionate about storing and protecting that valuable resource in an efficiently priced and distributed way. Now, what that means is addressing some of the major problems with today's storage infrastructure, decentralizing the cloud away from a small number of centralized providers, giving users full control over their data, turning data storage pricing into an efficient market, allowing the network to set prices rather than corporate pricing departments, making storage verifiable to ensure that when someone says they are storing your data, they actually are, and lastly, optimizing the world's storage and putting the zettabytes of latent storage capacity around the world to work. But it's really important to note that Filecoin is not just software. Filecoin is a rapidly growing ecosystem of thousands of talented people working towards the common goal. And that momentum is like a high-speed train, and it cannot be stopped. Every day, more talented developers, entrepreneurs, partners, community members join the ecosystem, and it's the strength and growth of that ecosystem that makes Filecoin incredibly unique. It's also why my job here as the ecosystem lead in the Filecoin project is incredibly easy. Now, many people have asked, what is the big, hairy, audacious goal that you are chasing? And I think everyone on this call will have a different answer to this, but I thought I would offer my answer. And before I do that, I want to set some context. Only 7% of the total data in the entire world that gets generated every day actually gets stored today. Today, we generate 58 zettabytes of data every year in 2020, but only 7% of that actually gets stored. And you'll notice that while that 58 zettabytes of data that gets generated every day is growing dramatically to over 175 zettabytes in 2024, the ratio of the amount stored is actually decreasing down to 5% in the next 4 or 5 years, as the data we produce as a species increases at a rate that the current cloud storage infrastructure cannot support. And the reason for that isn't because we don't want to store that data. It's not because it's not useful or important. but it's because it's either too expensive to store today using the current cloud storage providers, that you have to ask a company or a central authority for permission to store it. And oftentimes you yourself have to be a credible organization or at least have a credit card. Or third, the storage that you use today doesn't have the properties that you're looking for. It's not verifiable, or it's not decentralized, or it's not encrypted, etc. So our focus today is really not necessarily redistributing that 7% of data that gets stored today, but enable a market where the 93% of humanity's information that literally gets thrown in the trash every day can be preserved. And that would be my big, hairy, audacious goal for the folks on the call today. So moving forward, I'm going to provide a brief overview of some of the exciting things that are happening in the ecosystem today. First, I'll highlight some of the incredible organizations that are already investing tremendously in the Filecoin network and collaborating on the testnet. There are over 85 of them, and they're super, super interesting. And then second, I'll highlight the more than 250 teams and more than 1,000 people that are entering the Filecoin ecosystem through hackathons and accelerators as part of Filecoin Ignite. So we'll start with this first part. Now, I would be behooved to go into some of the Filecoin ecosystem without first mentioning that we are tremendous benefactors of the IPFS ecosystem and the growth that has generated over the last 5 years. The IPFS ecosystem is growing at roughly 10x every year, and the community of IPFS applications will always be a critical user of Filecoin, particularly for persistent storage, and we're making it very easy for them to integrate. I also want to highlight the number of open source developers that are contributing to the protocol and to our various GitHub repos increases every day. This is even slightly dated right now. I just checked and we're close to 1,600 contributors that have contributed to our various repos. Stemming from these two is an incredible landscape of applications, clients, token infrastructure, developer tooling, protocol implementations, and ecosystem partners that are absolutely exploding over time. This literally increases every week in the Filecoin project today. And so today I'll just highlight just a few subset of these, and I would be happy to go into detail on all of these at a later time. So we'll start with applications and clients. Fleek's space application is one of my favorites. It's an open source, private storage sharing and collaboration platform built on Filecoin, IPFS, and PowerGate. You can think of Space as a private, encrypted, peer-to-peer version of Dropbox or Google Drive, and it's beautifully designed. Next, Voodify and Biddle Labs are both building decentralized video applications on top of LivePeer and Filecoin technologies. And so it's going to be a huge explosion of video use cases for the Filecoin network. OpenBazaar and Haven have actually already integrated Filecoin as a payments mechanism for their decentralized marketplaces. And so that's just yet another use case for the Filecoin token. And Filecoin Discover is actually going to seed the network with really valuable and culturally important data sets that include many of the logos that you see here, from genomics data to blockchains and many others. And finally, Slate. Slate is just an absolutely best-in-class experience for uploading, collecting, and sharing media. It's totally open source and provides a reference implementation for how you can use Filecoin. So if you haven't tried Slate, please get on board. It's an incredible, incredible product. Next, I'll touch briefly on some of the developer tooling that folks have built on top of Filecoin as well. PowerGate is one of the most popular developer toolkits that allows any developer to deploy multi-tiered storage across Filecoin and IPFS. Truffle recently released Preserve, which simplifies the process of preserving long-lived application data on IPFS and Filecoin, and they're actually released a beta of their Ganache integration, which enables developers to spin up a local Filecoin simulator for quick development and testing. A few other cross-chain use cases, similar but slightly different than the Ethereum ones I mentioned, include P2P.org, which is working on a multi-blockchain ETL for Polkadot and Filecoin, and Ethereum Classic Labs, which is adding support for Filecoin through an open RPC for Lotus. And finally, of course, Protoschool has released a whole set of courses to onboard new developers onto the Filecoin ecosystem. And then in terms of token infrastructure, lots of exciting things here and tools that folks can use as they build applications on top of Filecoin and store different files and videos on top of Filecoin, including Ledger, which now supports Filecoin today. You should download the Filecoin application on your Nano X or Nano S. The Glyph self-hosted web wallet, which is an incredible self-hosted web wallet with the Ledger integration itself. MetaMask, which should be available shortly, and I've seen a couple incredible demos here. They look really, really easy to use. And Trust Wallet as well, which is available shortly. Okay, so that was a quick rapid fire overview of some of the few ecosystem examples and some of the amazing organizations that are collaborating on the network today. I next wanted to just go through a few examples of Filecoin Ignite, this broader umbrella program of events where folks can learn, build, and launch applications and various things on top of Filecoin. And it's important to note there are already over 250 teams entering the Filecoin ecosystem already through the events that exist, and thousands of people that are engaged in that process. So a few events I'll highlight from Filecoin Ignite. The first of which is HackFS. This was a hackathon completely run by ETH Global that occurred in July and early August. It took place over the course of 1 month. There were 470 hackers that participated, 134 projects that were submitted, over 50 countries and 19 time zones represented. And there are over 52 public events that you can watch on YouTube on how to build things on Filecoin and different showcases of those projects that you could take a look at. Sponsors included the Ethereum Foundation, Consensus, Textile, Fleek, and many others. And if you want to take a look at some of the applications that were built, check out this link that showcases the 134 projects that were submitted and details them out and links you to those various projects. It's really, truly an incredible display of how many things can be built on Filecoin in such a short amount of time. Similarly, Spark Hackathon, which was run by the Encode Club, had over 800 participants, 100 teams, 40 universities, and 6 continents. Filecoin was a part of it, and 30 teams built projects on the Filecoin network during that month as well. Apollo is actually a community of Filecoin builders and makers that are going through an intense 6-week period of mentorship. And this represents 130 Apollo fellows and 50 teams in the program. And this represents some really experienced founders, many of which have started tech companies before or have worked at large tech organizations and have contributed to lots of Web3 projects like IPFS, OrbitDB, SourceCred, and Textile. This is going to be a great program for projects to go from an MVP that they have into a product or a project that people really use and develop that into the next stage. And then finally, Filecoin Launchpad, which is powered by Tachyon, is an accelerator program where 15 to 20 teams who are building serious companies and organizations on the Filecoin network can endeavor to participate in. Those teams actually will receive $80,000 in investment over 3 months of intense mentorship and a demo day where they can attract further investment. We received over 100 applications, or at least Tachyon did, from over 15 countries across a whole variety of use cases. I am so excited to announce who's going to participate in this program. I've taken a look at all those applications. They are incredibly strong, and you're going to be amazed by the wide breadth of use cases that are going to appear coming out of this program. That program should kick off relatively shortly. And there's many more to come. I'm super excited in the next couple of weeks to announce a new accelerator program based in Asia that will support a whole bunch of Asian applications that are building on top of Filecoin as well. More on that to come. So with that, I want to step back and just say a heartfelt thank you to all the organizations and individuals that are so committed to developing the Filecoin ecosystem. Obviously, the folks on this call, the applications, the open source contributors, the mining community are just a subset of individuals and organizations that are active on our Slack and our communities. So we really want to thank you for believing in our mission, for participating in Space Race and Slingshot, and for investing in our testnet to make sure it's safe and secure. You're all helping make Filecoin a tremendous reality, and we're very grateful to be building alongside you. And I wanted to leave with this parting thought and this big audacious goal of let's enable a market where the 93% of humanity's information that currently gets thrown in the trash or not stored today can be preserved for the benefit of humanity. Thanks very much, and I will pass it back to Pooja.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Colin. It was a great presentation. Always super excited to see the really awesome growth in the Filecoin ecosystem. And hopefully at the end of the Slingshot competition, we will have many more great projects to showcase as exemplars at the end of these 3 weeks. So really looking forward to that. Thank you. And I will continue sharing. So, okay. So now that you kind of have, a bit of a framing for where Slingshot fits into like the entire Filecoin ecosystem, let's jump into some of the details of what you can expect over the next 3 weeks. So just as a high-level overview, Slingshot is a community competition for storage clients and developers that rewards the storage of real, valuable, and usable data onto the Filecoin Space Race network. The more real data you onboard onto the network, the more Filecoin tokens you will earn throughout this competition. And officially, as of this moment, we are already off to the races. The competition started earlier today, September 23rd, 2020 at 1800 UTC. So I believe it's a little bit over 2 hours ago and is already going strong. There are already dozens of projects that are participating in Slingshot, and you'll be able to see these projects later today when our leaderboard officially launches. So we're currently planning this competition in roughly 2 phases. The first phase we're calling the onboarding phase. And during the course of these first 3 weeks, so phase 1 is kind of, the first 3 weeks of the competition, we're aiming to onboard 1 petabyte of data. And that target is associated with a 100,000 Filecoin price pool. Phase 2 of the competition is the scale phase. And for this phase, we're aiming to onboard 10 petabytes of data by the end of the competition. Currently, we have scheduled this competition to run for 3 full weeks, again, beginning today and ending on October 14th, 2020, exactly 3 weeks from now at 1800 UTC. But of course, depending on how the competition unfolds, we may even extend the competition timing to allow us to onboard even more real data and valuable applications so that we can surpass this 10 petabyte target and unlock even more Filecoin rewards. There are 2 main components that are necessary in order to participate in Slingshot. The first is that you must store a valuable data set to Filecoin. And the second is you need to build an application or UI that will use this data in an interesting way. There are several different ways that you can accomplish this mandate. So I wanted to give a couple of examples. One is you can choose to build an end user facing application like Slate. Colin briefly touched on, Slate is this application that was launched a few weeks ago and is intending to make the end user experience of storing data to the IPFS and Filecoin networks extremely seamless and really fun. So for an application like this, Slate is storing user data to the Filecoin and IPFS networks and is also making this data retrievable through an easy to use UI. These sorts of applications are totally legitimate, excellent projects to participate in the Slingshot competition. But if you're looking for something, maybe you're starting from scratch and you're looking for some inspiration for how to participate in Slingshot, we have a list of curated data sets that the Slingshot admin team has been maintaining. And you can take a look at these data sets. They're on the Slingshot GitHub repo today. You can choose one, decide a data ingest process and a data structure for how you're going to actually structure that data and make it storable on the Filecoin network, actually store that data to the Filecoin network, and then ultimately to accomplish the second piece of participating in the competition, then build an application to explore the information that you have now stored to Filecoin. You can also choose a data set to store that isn't on this list, but in this case, just let us know what you're planning on doing and then follow the same steps of sort of storing this data to the network, building a UI, and ultimately making this data explorable through the UI and also just making it usable and retrievable by anyone who wants to retrieve this data from the Filecoin network. So once you've done some investigation into your project and decided what data set you'd like to use, what application or UI you'd like to build, you're now ready to register for the competition. So to register for the competition, there are 2 steps. First, you'll need to submit a registration form on the Slingshot website. And second, you'll need to submit a PR to the Filecoin Slingshot GitHub repo to tell us a little bit more about the project that you're working on. The instructions for how to submit this PR are already on the Filecoin Slingshot GitHub repo. But to touch on this a little bit, the PR template will ask for a few a few questions about your project, such as what your application or UI does, which data set you're planning on using, whether that's one of the curated data sets, data for your application or UI, or a new data set that you would like to suggest. It'll also ask you how much data you're planning on storing to the network, how you're planning on architecting your backend for this project, and a few other questions. The primary purpose of this PR is for us to give you feedback on how you're thinking about building this project. There are a lot of things we've learned about how to build applications on Filecoin that we would love to share to help point you in the right direction so that your project is successful. So please make sure to fill out all of these questions in sufficient detail. We will have a team of Slingshot community reviewers that will be able to provide this guidance to you and feedback to help your team be successful. And one other thing to note is that the PR that you submit at the beginning of the competition does not need to be final. You're able to change your project description throughout the competition simply by making a new PR. So once you've submitted your PR to the GitHub repo, as I mentioned, we will have this process of community review by a panel of Slingshot community reviewers. They'll review your PR and provide feedback on your project direction. Slingshot community reviewers are members of the Filecoin ecosystem who have consistently demonstrated their deep commitment to the long-term health of the Filecoin network. So you can see some of these really wonderful people on this slide. This is our initial panel of community reviewers. They include dedicated members of the mining community who participated in Space Race, long-term community members in the IPFS and Filecoin developer ecosystems. So we have several folks from Textile, Fleek, of course, Filecoin, libp2p, ChainSafe, Infura, Pinata, Slate, and IPFS main as well. And over the next few days, we'll also be announcing a couple of additional community members who will be added to this review panel. These community reviewers will review your PR with an SLA of around 48 hours as a turnaround time. And if they accept your project, they will merge your PR to the Slingshot repo. And after a brief period of time, you'll also be able to see your project details reflected onto the Slingshot leaderboard. If they don't immediately accept your project, don't worry. They'll provide feedback on the PR and ask for more information so that they can reconsider your application. You'll have until the final week of the competition to register and finalize your PR for consideration. So you haven't missed anything if you haven't happened to register yet. There's plenty of time to test out Filecoin, build applications, and compete. So because this is a kickoff, I wanted to make sure we covered a couple of the main rules for this competition. To be eligible for Filecoin rewards at the end of Slingshot, you'll need to have followed these rules throughout the competition. First, of course, is, as I've mentioned, please make sure that you have completed the proper registration process. Next is just to make sure that you're doing what is in the spirit of this competition and storing real, valuable, and usable data to the Filecoin network. We'll be running some checks throughout the competition to make sure that accepted projects are following the rules here. The third rule is generally, we're looking for some sort of application or UI that allows other users to explore this data in a meaningful way. Your project must pass community review, as I just described. One of the eligibility criteria that we have introduced is that your project must make storage deals with at least 3 miners on the Filecoin network. And we can talk about that a little bit more, maybe in the Q&A for this kickoff. Another important requirement for this competition is that the data you store must be retrievable by anyone. It's important to be pretty thoughtful about how you're storing your data on the network so that it's properly structured and can be efficiently retrieved from Filecoin. And we'll also be testing for this periodically throughout the competition. And lastly, all participants will need to participate in the Slingshot Showcase after the competition ends. So what is the Slingshot Showcase? The Slingshot Showcase is going to be this really exciting event after the competition is over to demo to the community all the hard work that you will have done over the next 3 weeks. We'll require some teams to complete some verification steps during the showcase as well to check that you have continued to follow the competition rules throughout the entire 3 weeks. We'll be asking each of the top 100 eligible teams to record a presentation describing their project as well as a working demo of the application for the showcase. In addition, the top 10 eligible teams will be invited to present at the live Slingshot Showcase event. We're going to publish specific criteria for the showcase presentations at the end of week 3 of the competition. Really looking forward to this event. And just a quick note on disqualification, just because this is a competition. It's possible that your team may become disqualified at any point in the competition if you violate the competition rules or are found to be gaming the competition in any way, if you plagiarize other projects. So, we're just a brief reminder that we're running this competition to help support the Filecoin storage client and developer communities. So we would love it if you would follow the rules and honor the spirit of this competition and help make Filecoin a really incredible storage network for all of these wonderful use cases that you're bringing to Filecoin today. So because of this, because of the potential for disqualification at any point in the competition, the leaderboard results will not be truly final until shortly after the competition ends and after this Slingshot showcase. All right, so really quickly, now that you're familiar with some of the logistics, I'd like to spend just a few brief moments to share some guidance for developers to help you get off to a smoother start. One common question that we receive from a lot of developers is which tech stack should you be using if you want to both store data to the Filecoin network and interact with this data through an application or UI? There's several different technologies that you can use to accomplish this. But one thing to note is that due to the security parameters of the Filecoin network, retrieving data directly from the Filecoin network, from Filecoin miners, is in most cases significantly slower than retrieving from, say, a caching layer or another solution like IPFS. Thus, most developers that are building applications and UIs use hybrid multi-tiered storage solutions. These solutions store data to a caching layer, as I mentioned. Potentially, you can use IPFS as this caching layer, and then they will also back up all of the data that they're storing on this caching layer to the Filecoin network. Then when you need to retrieve data for the purposes of your application, you can use the same content hash or CID to retrieve the file from the hottest storage layer where that data is available, whether that's a local copy, whether it's from the caching layer or the IPFS network, or from Filecoin. We recommend that most developers use one of the following solutions for this competition, which is PowerGate or Textile buckets. And Andrew Hill, who is the co-founder and CEO of Textile, it's the amazing team that has been building these technologies and maintaining them for the last several months, will tell us a little bit more about exactly what these projects can do and how you can build on them for Slingshot. But just as one brief reminder, we do not actually recommend that developers who are primarily interested in storing data and retrieving it from the Filecoin network use Lotus. Lotus is fairly low level. They're much nicer products that are oriented towards developers. They're much easier to use. And again, because of some of the performance considerations I mentioned, we really do recommend that you use one of PowerGate or Textile buckets or a solution like that. So that's it. Those are the most important details to be aware of so that you're successful during the Slingshot competition. And next, I'd love to introduce Andrew, co-founder and CEO of Textile, to share more about how you can use Textile technologies throughout the Slingshot competition. Over to you, Andrew.
Thank you very much. Let me just share some slides here. Okay, so if you're joining today and you've been building things in the IPFS or Filecoin ecosystems previously, you might have seen me sharing things over the last few months about what we've been building. But I'm really excited to be here today and be taking part in the Slingshot project and being here to support teams. And so at Textile, we're really thinking deeply about how to accelerate the developers in getting their projects onto these networks and getting real usable products out there to end users. And so we've put a lot of thinking and a lot of work into what we've been building, the layers that we've been building to do that. And we're ready to give those things to you and have you start testing and pushing the limits of those products and really pushing the limits of the network, hopefully. And so let me just share a little bit about what we have available for you throughout this competition and how you can use it to really get data onto Filecoin. And I think I really appreciate what Colin was saying before about the motivators of getting data onto this network. And I think that's really one of the biggest reasons why Textile is here, because we really believe in that mission and we really believe in the importance of data for humanity, and that a lot of data is still out there to become part of humanity's legacy for future generations. And so if you're working on those projects, we want to work with you. And so let's talk about that. So we can help you launch your idea over the next weeks in a couple of different ways. 3 ways now, and then I'll kind of end it on the 4th way. But the first one is infrastructure. And so a lot of the teams that are going to be adding data to the Filecoin network are going to want to use one of a handful of different technologies to build their pipeline to get data into the network. And like Pooja was saying, you may go to a Lotus node directly, but if you want to get some sort of nice APIs built around that are specifically designed for application developers, we've built a technology called PowerGate. And I'll talk about the specifics of PowerGate in a second. But one thing to note is that PowerGate has a few different ways that you can use it and run it. It has ways that you can run it in developer mode that are fast and lightweight, and you can really test whether your approach will work before you start doing things on the public network. Then we have roll your own versions. We have Dockerized instances, and we also have an opportunity for you to get access to hosted instances that we're actually running, where you can get dedicated APIs for your project on our infrastructure. And I'll give you links to all of that. We also have other products that are more built around APIs for applications to be embedded in applications. And they have a lot of the thinking encoded in them for access control, for quota management. And all of those exist in a product that we build called the Textile Hub. And the Textile Hub itself has multiple different components, one of which is called buckets. And so you've heard of buckets already in today's call, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But that's a really great product for a lot of projects probably coming to Slingshot. And then finally, scaling data interoperability and documentation. Those are all things that we think about every day at Textile. And you can really see that in what we focus on in building APIs, in building modules, in formatting data that's getting onto these networks, and in publishing tutorials and documentation. And so you can really lean on us there and look at what we have available, and hopefully learn something and get you building and publishing faster. So about these kind of two primary technologies, which I think will be the touch points for teams in this competition. The first one is PowerGate. Like Pooja already mentioned, it's a multi-tiered storage system that bridges IPFS and Filecoin. It actually bridges IPFS, Filecoin, HTTP, a lot of other things. But you can really think of it as a system that you can build into your own stack in order to use Filecoin as a storage layer in whatever application you're building. PowerGate is itself a collection of technologies. It runs a Lotus node inside of it. It runs not inside of it. It runs a Lotus node. It runs an IPFS node. It has its own set of technologies to do things like long-term deal management, state management, wallet address management, a lot of helpful tools there. And then it has a huge API surface area where you can build applications on top of. And then clients, of course, we have clients as well. And so you can find our JavaScript client, for example, for connecting to that instance. And so the documentation is really pretty thorough. So you can find that on GitHub. You can also find that on our documentation site. And here's a few links for you. Just grab a screenshot here, or we'll share these slides after the call as well. But the GitHub repo, great place to go learn about the nuances of the technology stack. If you want to roll your own, that's a great place to go and check out the code. If you want to get access to hosted versions of PowerGate, we have a simple form you can fill out. Tell us about your project. We'll get you in the queue. And then the documentation site for Textile has a lot more. There's also a channel in the Filecoin Slack dedicated to PowerGate users where we're just giving support. So if you have technical questions about running your own, about using the hosted APIs, about feature requests, this is a great place to jump in, share your ideas, ask your questions, and we'll get back to you as fast as we can. Or other people in the community will get back to you like we've been seeing, which is awesome. The other piece is Textile buckets. And so Textile buckets are dynamic directories that are stored on IPFS through another technology you don't have to worry about today called threads. But it allows you to create these dynamic folders that you can push to remote peers. And we host one of those remote peers that you can leverage very easily. And that peer is connected to a PowerGate instance itself. And so this is really for people that are building applications, building complex pipelines where they want to use a very simple API. And it's really, really simple. And so here's a real example of how quick you can get onto the Filecoin network today using buckets. This is using the command line tool. We also have JavaScript libraries and all the other clients. But here I call 3 commands. I initialize a bucket, I push the contents of that bucket, and then I call archive, and that gets added to a queue to create a deal on Filecoin. And that takes time, but you can sit there and watch it, or you can come back later and check the status of that deal and retrieve that data. And you can take the metadata for any deal, and you can leave the Textile Hub. You can stop using buckets entirely. You could go back to a Lotus node, for example, and take that deal information and get it back out of the network. But you can also use all of this set of APIs to do it right here as well. And so again, there's a ton of documentation out there about how to use buckets through the command line, running your own bucket daemons, or just using the JavaScript library or one of our other client libraries. Again, documentation. We also have a Slack channel now for buckets users. So if you're going to jump into this, if you have questions, if you want more links or pointers here, go to the Filecoin Slack and join the buckets users channel, and we can get you answers as fast as you can ask them, hopefully. And so I want to return to this now, just to kind of, now that you've seen these 2 technologies and where they really fit in the Filecoin data flow. So again, infrastructure, run your own Power Gates, sign up to get hosted Power Gates, or use buckets on the hosted infrastructure available through the Textile Hub. APIs and access control, that's that's something that is really available through the Textile Hub. PowerGate is really a user agnostic system. It doesn't have any strict access control rules that you have to use, so you can really build your own systems on top of it if that's the direction you want to go. And then scaling interoperability in docs. I shared a bunch of docs links, so hopefully that'll get you started there. But there is a 4th thing, which is really one of the valuable pieces of building on Textile, and that's our community. And there's really great projects that are building on Textile today, and they're very active. Most of them are open source. Many of them are very vocal, and so you can find them on the Filecoin Slack channel. You can find them on our community Slack channel, and many of them are more than willing to share their experiences and help out if you have questions. But also they help us learn how to scale these systems faster and faster every day. And so we're still improving this stack, and we'll continue to improve it during this competition even. And so hopefully you'll experience these things even getting better every day. But that's so much because of our community and because of how quickly they're building on these things and how much feedback they're giving us. And so join it, lean on them, lean on us. We're here to help you. We're here to bring data to the network and really make this awesome. And so thanks so much for all the help and the support from the Filecoin team on building these things, and Pooja and Peter and Jimmy and everybody else that's been really spending time with us, making sure that we can get these things to you. And now it's ready, and now it's yours as developers. So let's get racing and launch this thing. One last note is that Textile, we're offering office hours weekly. First one is tomorrow. I think it's a shorter one, 30 minutes. And then next week, we'll be having office hours as well, and also kicking off a couple of master classes, which are kind of deep dives into these technologies. The first one is on Monday, and it will be about PowerGate. And so if you're interested in this, pay attention to those and make sure you join them. And that's all I've got. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Andrew. Yeah, and for folks who haven't seen, Andrew and many other members of the Textile team have created some really, really great videos and workshops and so on in the past. So we will have on the Filecoin Slingshot repo a link to some learning resources that you can use as well if you're looking to get started with these technologies. So really, really excited that they exist. Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about rewards and prizes. Very exciting portion of this competition. So the way that the Slingshot prizes work, Slingshot will distribute a prize pool amongst all participants who are eligible for rewards. And the size of the prize pool is determined by the total amount of data that is stored on the network. The more data that we all store collectively, the greater the size of the prize pool that will be unlocked for this competition. And the way that we're planning on distributing rewards at competition end is essentially proportionally. So whatever fraction of the total data onboarded comes from your project is roughly proportionally how much of the total prize pool you will earn as a reward at the end of the competition. To illustrate the concept briefly, let's say that at the end of this 3 weeks, we've reached the 1 PebiByte target and we've unlocked the 1 PebiByte prize pool of 100,000 Filecoin tokens. If there are 2 participants who are eligible for rewards and each of them has stored roughly half of the data that's being stored on the network, they're going to split the prize pool equally. So each participant will get 50,000 Filecoin tokens. One note is that these rewards will be vesting linearly over 6 months from the moment of mainnet launch or the end of the competition, whichever is later. So these are our current reward prize pools, as you can see on the slide, and they're all leading up to the largest prize pool, which is if we collectively onboard more than 10 PebiBytes of data, we unlock the 500,000 Filecoin prize pool. So very, very exciting. It's a big target. I think we can hit it. And we may add more rewards throughout the course of this competition as well. So please stay tuned on the Slingshot announcements channel, as we'll be updating as the competition progresses. And now I'm going to turn it over briefly to David, who is one of the coordinators for the Slingshot competition, also a member of the IPFS and Filecoin teams, who will be explaining more about the really great events and workshops that we have lined up for the competition, as well as where you can get help. So David, over to you.
Hey, thanks, Pooja. Nice to meet everyone. I'm David. As Pooja mentioned, I help out with IPFS and Filecoin ecosystems. I'm here to chat through some of the next steps for you all. So the competition calendar, some of the events to look forward to, and where to go to get help. I know we're running a little bit behind, so I'll try to get through quickly, but I guess no promises. So here is a high-level overview of the Phase 1 competition calendar. Phase 1 is scheduled for 3 weeks overall, spread over 4 calendar weeks. One thing to note here is that we'll be accepting submissions for the competition on a rolling basis until the competition closes in week 4. So there isn't a deadline for submission until Phase 1 is over. And you can find more details in the competition rules on this. Across these next 3 weeks, we have really a ton of awesome events coming up to meet you all, to help think through your projects and how to use Filecoin and related ecosystem technologies. And we're also really looking forward to learning from you all, hearing what's working well and not so well, and seeing just the amazing things that you're building. And eventually at the end of week 4, or in week 4 at the end of the competition, celebrating your hard work and really just some of the first use cases built on top of the Filecoin protocol. Here's a more detailed calendar. Really would like for you all to zoom in on what's going on in the next week, which is more solidified. The events after that are still kind of in flux, but we'll keep an up-to-date calendar on the events tab of the website. Yeah, just saw it posted in chat. And over the next 7 days, we have some master classes on Filecoin coming up to cover the basics of Filecoin, how to make deals, splitting up large files, use cases for the current network capabilities, as well as some master classes from Textile, as Andrew mentioned, on how to use PowerGate and buckets, and office hours as well for you to ask more pointed questions and get some more one-on-one time there. And yeah, if you go to the events tab on the website, you can RSVP for events, get links for the YouTube streams, and just get the latest slate of events. So please stay tuned there. So stepping away from events specifically, want to just mention the different channels where you can go to get help. So as the competition progresses, you'll definitely have questions, and we would love for you to get those answered. So here's a list of some of the best resources. One of the first places to go would be the Slingshot website for details on the competition, FAQs. Those will be updated over time, so please check those continuously. And then also the Slingshot GitHub repo. That's where you'll be submitting your project and where the review process will be taking place. But it's also where a lot of the information on how that works is held. So please take a look at that too. And if you don't have your questions answered by the above, join us on Filecoin Slack. Highlighted some of the channels that are most useful potentially. So the Slingshot channel is for questions about the competition, your specific submission, things like that. Filecoin Help, some other Filecoin channels are for Filecoin technical questions. Andrew mentioned 2 channels where Textile lurks quite a bit. So PowerGate users and Buckets users for help on the Textile stack and technical questions there. And then Slingshot announcements, not a channel for you to ask questions, but there'll be announcements there regarding Slingshot, events starting and that sort of thing. And then really quickly, this probably shouldn't be at the bottom of the list, but please utilize the Filecoin docs and the Textile docs, as well as if you're using IPFS as part of your app, the IPFS docs as well. And those are pretty great and are only getting better over time, and is not only a great starting point for you to start on the technical side of your project, but has a lot of great reference for you. And then finally, I just wanted to introduce the Slingshot admin team that you'll see around Slack, trying to answer questions as quickly and as best as they can. It's not an exhaustive list of everyone who will be helping out. There'll be other friendly faces from ecosystem project teams and protocol labs. And then also love to see the activity so far, even from you all and other community members chiming in and answering questions. So please continue to do so. And yeah, I think that's all I have. Back to you, Pooja.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. And thank you for the whole team who is managing Slingshot events and programming and supporting all the participants as well. So really excited to see the slate of events that are coming up. Awesome. And lastly, I think this is our last presentation for today. It's my pleasure to introduce Juan, who's the founder of Protocol Labs in the Filecoin project, to share more about some of the motivation and vision behind Slingshot and why this is a particularly great moment to jump into the Filecoin ecosystem.
Hey, thank you. One second. Sharing my screen. All right, can everyone see that? Can I get a yes?
Yes.
Great, thank you. Super excited for Slingshot. This is going to be really amazing period for the network. Really excited about all of the presentations that you saw today. So I'm going to try and keep it pretty brief. I'm going to focus on a couple of things. Really remind us why Web3 matters and what we're doing. And then I'm going to shift most of what I'm going to talk about to just giving you a lot of ideas for different kinds of data sets and data and applications that you might consider as competitors in Slingshot. So Web3 is an evolution and a next technological revolution and part of the internet. So computing is one of the most important things that is happening to our species. The internet is one of the biggest and most important components of our species now, in the sense that it's just beyond a technology. We're sort of integrating all of our systems and organizations and ways of working together through computing. And Web3 is a very important movement to try and establish architectures and systems that give control of data to the users and humans and groups involved in producing that data and establishing a very important set of rights in the internet. So as we look back in the last 80 years, computing has dramatically transformed humanity. We have superpowers beyond what our ancestors imagined. So in a very, very short time. So again, 80 years is not a long time by any kind of stretch of imagination. It's a very short time slice in the history of most of the nations. In many nations today, it's a very short time slice in terms of human history. It's a very, very, very tiny, minuscule time slice in terms of our planet's history. So in a very, very short time, computing has radically transformed how we operate. And these days, billions of humans are working together and integrating with computers in all kinds of ways and are generating vast amounts of data. And all of that data and information gets integrated into applications, and you have this amazing combination of programs coupled with data that grant superpowers. So all you have to do if you want to grant a new superpower to humanity today in this amazing era is build an application that you can distribute over the internet and connect it to a bunch of data sources and be able to store that data again in the medium of the internet. And if you do that, you can now grant people an amazing superpower. Right now, we're speaking through these kinds of amazing superpowers. We're running an application together. We're running a system through the internet. The data that we're producing right now together, the video stream, the chat, all of that kind of stuff is getting stored somewhere. That data storage can be accessed by other people and so on. But now it really matters then who gets access to that data, who can view it, how it's stored, is it going to persist, is it going to be around in a year, in 2 years, and so on. So this is where Web3 really comes in and can help establish good properties in the infrastructure. So I really want the folks in Slingshot to consider like the kinds of data and the kinds of applications that they want to see in the future and try to push us closer to that reality incrementally by taking one significant step right now in kind of helping bring a bunch of really useful and valuable data sources so that then people can take the initial applications you build or build other applications around that. So also looking ahead, and kind of why this matters, if we can establish really good properties to our infrastructure layers today, and we can build a better application distribution platform, a better superpower distribution platform, then we'll be able to establish a much better framework for how to compute together, especially as dramatic shifts in computing are land, right? So things like augmented reality, virtual reality, brain-machine interfaces, all of these kinds of things are roughly around the corner. And how the access rights and abilities of people to participate in those new forms of computation together will be based heavily on the systems of today. So how the web works now, how app stores work now. You have like this very different world of very controlled, centralized app stores versus a much more decentralized web where you can distribute anything you want. Those kinds of models are going to be picked by the people building augmented reality and virtual reality systems. In fact, they're being built. Many of them are being built right now, and there's going to be a very significant battle ahead, probably in the next 3 to 10 years, maybe a bit longer, where all of these different frameworks are going to be played out, and we'll see whether we're headed towards a future that is open and free or closed and heavily controlled. And so I really think this is a critical time period for us to establish much better infrastructure layers that bake in those important rights and models. And really to prove it out, we really have to show that the vast amounts of data that augmented reality and virtual reality systems are going to require is best served by an open system than a closed one. The web was best served by an open system than a closed one, and it won out. The social media world, though, was best served so far by a closed system, and so that has won out for now. Hopefully, it'll open up, and hopefully, it'll be in the long run better served by an open one. But that battle is not in a good place today. It is, I think, extremely important that in the future, these other mediums of communication, augmented reality and virtual reality, are built on very strong open foundations. And to get there, we really have to prove out in this period that we can handle that kind of scale of load. We can handle all of the assets. We can handle the connectivity. We can handle the distribution information. And I think that the Filecoin network can right now play a really important part in that role by establishing a vast storage network and prove out that we can handle those kinds of sizes. It's fine if it's slow at first. It's fine if it's kind of clunky and hard to move around data. But if we can deal with that kind of capacity and that kind of storage level, then we can work as a separate step on improving access and improving distribution and all that kind of stuff. So if we can do it and we can succeed in the next couple of years in doing this and in amassing a bunch of data, I think we'll be in a dramatically better position for the future. So I think you can connect what we're doing today and what we're doing in this very competition to that longer term vision and that longer term hope for a better future. And I really want to encourage you to think ahead as you're building things. And this is more of like a longer term thing. Step back and reflect on the last 80 years and try to look ahead into the next 80 years. What are the kinds of things that are really going to matter, that are really going to push humanity in good directions? What's going to make a difference? And then just zoom back into like the next 10 years, the next 5 years, the next year, the next month, and think of how you can incrementally push for a better outcome by helping build something that's open, helping build systems that help others do other things. And simply just sometimes grabbing a data set and putting it, a really important, valuable open access data set, and putting it in a mode that is easy to distribute and easy to access can save other people hundreds of hours of work. So imagine scientists that are trying to gather data and use it and so on. If you can help them just save 100 hours or save 1,000 hours by making it easier to access, right now you've already improved the species quite a bit, because those 1,000 hours that those scientists were going to spend doing like data transformations and trying to move the data and so on, they can now spend in the analysis or the writing of results or in future work. So I think right now as tool builders and application and system builders, very small actions can have tremendous dramatic impact in the long term by just helping other humans save time and by moving things into a better direction. When we look back, the people who were building simple incremental next steps, we can connect and see how important and valuable those things were. But at the time they felt small, they felt like experimental things and so on. So really don't just try and follow the gradient of how to help others, and I think we'll be in really good shape. Maybe the last thing I'll mention around this is that really the goal for Web3 is to bring all kinds of properties to the web by hooking into verifiable principles. So we want to make data that's you can authentically show that it's authenticated itself, where where it came from to some extent, or you can prove its veracity. You can show that maybe something was a picture or a video was indeed taken and not a deep fake or something like that. Or you can do things like actually assure other people in the future that this data is going to be stored for some period of time, and want to create algorithms for making sure that can indeed happen. You can make sure that transactions between parties are verifiable. So all of the great work of Web3 connects into in some way or another making transactions and parts of the systems verifiable. And think about the kinds of rights that you would want to have and how to build them into systems and algorithms and so on, so that we can indeed count on these. Maybe I'll mention that I really see Web3 as a combination of various different movements: the decentralized web movement, the blockchain movement, and the linked data movement. Each of these is pretty different on its own. They have very different properties and so on. But at the end of the day, it all boils down to how we store, access, and distribute data, and what rights and properties we can keep and assure about them, right? So are the transactions legitimate? Is the data going to be accessible? Do I have to depend on another party to view this data? Can I relate the information to others on my own? Or can I relate it in a way where the sources of information are very clear? All of this kind of stuff boils into Web3. And so I really encourage you to kind of in this competition think about what kind of important data sets from these communities can be pulled into Filecoin, so that we can build interesting applications. The linked data world has been accumulating really valuable open access stuff for about probably close to 20 years now. So there's all kinds of really important, valuable data sets there. It might not be really big data because it's small files, but it might yield some really cool and interesting applications. Likewise, blockchains have been accumulating now larger stores of single stores of a bunch of transactional data. All of it, you can actually take all of the blockchains, things like the Bitcoin blockchain and Ethereum blockchain and so on, and take those and put them onto Filecoin. Like that's kind of a fun thing that you might do. And then in terms of kind of the decentralized web, like really look at what kinds of applications are already being built in the Web3 world, and think about just bringing those assets into Filecoin and being able to kind of link them in. You can anything that's built on top of IPFS, you can just back up directly to Filecoin easily, right? And you can plug in Filecoin as a data storage medium, and then that can bring it online and persist it in a different way. And so, really think about, so I'll remind us all of the mission of Filecoin. We wanted to create a decentralized, efficient, and robust foundation for humanity's information. And I really thank you for being part of this mission and this project and this ecosystem. This is an amazing moment for all of us, and it's amazing to be able to look back over the last 6 years for me, and 1, 2, 3, 4 years for many other people, and just see this movement growing together, and this amazing thing that we're building together is in a great condition, and it has an amazing promise for the future. And I really hope that you make the most of it, and it can be helpful to you. One thing I wanted to mention is you can think of Filecoin as a protocol that's part of the IPFS protocol, and you can think of the IPFS protocol as part of Lip2P. So you can think of then other things that are built on these other systems, and how easily you could plug them in or grab data from them. So think of other things that are built with IPFS, and you can maybe back that stuff easily into Filecoin and so on. In terms of Slingshot and Space Race 2 in general, right now I wanted to mention that concurrent to Slingshot, the Space Race 2 orbital burn period is happening. So a lot of miners are thinking about growing their storage or maintaining operations and thinking about the storage lifecycle and so on. And some subset of miners are now kind of looking ahead and starting to think through how they can be helpful to clients and to users and so on. And a number of them are going to be around and participating in Slingshot either directly or in the periphery to help practice the storage deal flows, meet clients, and start building relationships. At the end of the day, this is a marketplace, and so this is a good opportunity for miners to get involved in helping out clients, sometimes even helping them find and access the data, sometimes in helping build applications and so on. And maybe in that case, miners and clients start blurring in between. And so, really thanks to the miners that are participating in Slingshot. I think it's going to be really important and really valuable. And clients, this is really your time to shine. This is a competition designed much more and specifically for you. This is a period where you can focus on finding interesting and valuable data sets that you care about and onboarding them into a system. And you can think about it as you can get really cheap free storage for valuable data sets that you care about. So if you think, hey, I really care about open access map data around the planet, and that's kind of big, and it's it's hard to store around and so on, hey, put it on Filecoin, and then it's going to be stored. One important thing is, because we're going to carry over all of the sectors from Space Race testnet into the mainnet, this is a great chance for you to just back up tons of really important and valuable information for the future that you care about having, basically for free. So if you want to keep around a bunch of really useful, valuable data, you can just make it part of this competition and get it into the network, and then it'll be stored for a long time. Likewise with that, think about the kinds of applications you want to build on that data. Once you have those archives, what can you build on top of it? What are the kinds of interfaces and UIs and superpowers you want to give to other people? And this is practically a very good time for you to practice that flow. Think of get your bearings straight, learn about how to make applications, deploy them into the network, how to access data, how to all of the different systems and protocols available to you. Get used to how to use PowerGate, how to use the underlying primitives, how to use even things like loaders and so on, and get a sense of all of the deal flow mechanics, so that way we'll be much better set up for the future when you want to make a lot of storage deals in the mainnet. This is Slingshot is really kind of focused more towards the kind of left side of this market picture where clients and applications kind of come online. Space Race 1 was where we kind of built up a lot of capacity, and that was very focused on storage miners. And so now with Slingshot, we want to bring a lot of really valuable data into the picture and kind of boot this whole marketplace. So with that in mind, I'm going to start giving you some ideas. Really look at the IPFS world of applications and see which ones of them have good data sizes and so on that you want to kind of bring on. There's a lot of cool stuff there, and all of that data is on IPFS already. So all you have to do is replicate it and back it up into Filecoin. So there's a lot of really cool applications. There's also all of the there's been a ton of websites and systems deployed through Fleek and unstoppable domains and ENS. And so all of that stuff is on IPFS as well. So you can just grab all of those sites and kind of back them up into Filecoin. And then there's really cool archives that are specific. So things like Audios who are building a large archive of really useful and valuable music. And you can think of Audios as both the layer of kind of storage of the music using IPFS, and then on top of that, the protocols for how the artists publish their music and interact with their fans and their community. And then the actual literal applications that you use, right? So you can download the Audios app, put it in your phone, you can look at the Audios app on the web and so on. But the protocol, the Audios protocol and the data set underneath, all of that is open in an IPFS. So what you can do is, if you want a different interface for Audios, or you want to do something with the Audios music, then all you have to do is bring the Audios music into Filecoin, build an app on PowerGate that connects to that data, and now you can showcase like a different thing. It could be like a different way to browse and explore the music and so on, and you can really make this Web3 protocol shine with a new kind of application. So one thing I wanted to kind of remind us all is, the world today is a world where there's kind of most applications build their own database, and it's kind of segregated and creates a sort of walled garden. And the large scale applications kind of segment and split all their data. And with Web3 and things like Filecoin, the goal is to build one very large scale data layer where all of the applications can then be sort of part of that single large layer. And so that means that either an application might have their own segment data within this large storage system, or they might actually share the data. So for example, imagine that you have a bunch of really important and valuable data, something like maybe large photo archives or music archives or something like that. You can have many different applications and systems pointing to the same data and using it in different ways. So the data sets that you might bring into the network, you could build one application, or you could actually build 2 or 3 small applications that showcase using that application in different ways. And so something like that can be really interesting and valuable in this period. So one important thing before I start giving you a bunch of ideas, check the distribution license. So it's super important that the data that you go and copy and put into Filecoin it has proper and good licensing. So make sure that it's, highly recommend that you stick to Creative Commons data or data, because that's a really easy license to see. Otherwise, really, make sure that when you're going to copy a data set and put into Filecoin and so on, either you are creating it, and so you have the right to do that, or if you're taking other people's data, really make sure that you do have the ability and right to do that. That's you're taking that action. So really make sure that you check the license. So with that, I'm gonna talk about a few things that you might wanna look at. So there's a ton of really valuable public data sets where you can find a ton of really valuable scientific data that is actually really large. So you can find data sets as small as gigabyte sizes to terabytes and even petabytes. So depending on your appetite for how much data storage you wanna try and onboard, you can find a bunch of data sets of these different sizes, and a ton of them are open access and permissively licensed. So you can just grab them and put them onto Filecoin and onboard a ton of really useful, valuable data. And hey, you're gonna be helping back up this really critical stuff. So all of this data sometimes has trouble surviving because it's very expensive to keep around a lot of data. Hey, Filecoin can give free data storage to these folks as part of this competition. So that would be a really valuable thing that you might do for these communities. But again, also make sure that you're not going to present like a large load on their system. So handle with care. With that, there's also a ton of open access paper archives where you can take all of the actual journals and so on that are open access, and you can make really different viewers and build maybe the best and largest compendium of open access information around. Highly recommend looking at efforts like all the stuff that the Internet Archive and Open Journal and things like that have done. That's a phenomenal area to explore. Then beyond the papers themselves, you can look at the figures and the data. So the biggest part of scientific information is usually like the data sets, and perhaps the most valuable is sometimes the figures and the analysis and the conclusions in the papers. Those kinds of things sometimes can be separated out from the paper PDFs and stored, and they become valuable assets themselves. Sometimes these figures are not just kind of a 2D representation. Sometimes these figures are entire 3D models and systems like that, and they start getting big. When I call out like the picture there with all the data sets, those are the disks and hard drives of the images taken of a black hole. And so I think this was a big moment. I think it was last year. But this is a lot of data. So a lot of really valuable data exists in the scientific community that you can help back up. And then there's also preprint archives where there are already these large collections of important, valuable stuff that you can maybe help back up. I think music is a really amazing collection of data as well for a lot of people. Audio, I'll plug audios again here because I think this is the easiest one to get going with. It's it's meant to be open, it's meant to be distributed and shared in a Web3 way. All of it is already addressed with IPFS. It's probably fairly easy to get going with this. Encourage you to start there. Maybe maybe this can be like your first step into it. Like a few of you can get together and do this, and then kind of try it later on with other data sets. But yeah, I think like building applications with music, that would be really awesome and would really showcase the value of the network. And yeah, again, just because I mentioned the music, like really make sure the licensing is right. Like only open access music. Think about like different kind of ETH applications that this kind of like the normal pathway for a lot of ETH applications. Now that Filecoin is here, people can start transitioning their storage from normal public centralized clouds into the decentralized network. So think about a bunch of cool ETH applications that you've used and think about bringing them to Filecoin. Yeah, here's the a slice of the Filecoin ecosystem. Sorry, the IPFS ecosystem, and so a lot of these stuff can become also part of the Filecoin ecosystem by helping replicate the data. So things like Decentraland and so on. There's a small collection of IPFS archives, and there's a web page somewhere, and I saw just quickly that that's about 27 terabytes of data, all already on IPFS. So that's like an easy grab for a lot of you. You can just go and like grab these, replicate them, and put them on Filecoin. Developer assets are really sometimes quite big, and there's a lot of them, and everyone is interested in their broad distribution and long-term backup. And so this is just a source of a ton of really useful stuff that a lot of people care about. So if you can figure out how to do package manager registries or VMs and containers and just start replicating a lot of that stuff into Filecoin, then we'll get a much better backup for all this really important stuff. And you can maybe build cool applications on top of those. So I really think like in terms of like the developer asset workflows with IPFS, I think where Filecoin can really shine is in the storing and distributing of that data. And so I think with Slingshot, just think about what is like the right size. Like you want assets that are big enough but easy enough for you to actually get and put into Filecoin. So maybe it's the packages, maybe it's containers. VMs are also larger, but there's less good kind of open access stuff there. Also want to highlight video. So there are, and again, also really verify the licensing. There's a lot of really valuable video assets that are open, and you can go and help replicate. There's a lot of really cool archives. Video makes up a huge part of the internet and the data distribution flows. So help back up like really useful, valuable video. Now, one that's near and dear to my heart, I got into computing through games and gaming, and so I think there's all kinds of really cool open source games now. The world has changed a lot in the last 20 years. There's just tons of stuff out there that you can find. You can help back up the assets of these games and help them distribute stuff. Oftentimes the distribution is really hard for indie game developers. So just help find those games, back them up, replicate them, and help people download those games so they can play them. And also, there's a whole bunch of game assets. So if you're pretty clever, you can build an application where you can make the assets themselves individually addressable. And if you make the assets individually addressable, then you can make games on top of that asset library directly. So instead of today, when a game developer tries to make a game, they'll grab all these assets either by making them or taking them from libraries, and then put them together into a game and then distribute that. But on Filecoin, if you're going to make a game on Filecoin, then potentially what you could be doing instead is first bringing all the game asset library onto Filecoin. And once it's there, if you can individually address the assets, then your game is just the code on top of those assets. So maybe for Slingshot, if some of you like gaming, you could bring all these asset libraries, these open source game asset libraries onto Filecoin, help them with the distribution, and then make it easy for people to write simple games that just point to those assets. With that in mind, there's a bunch of really cool Web3 virtual worlds emerging. I think the two I'll mention that I spend a fair amount of time in are Decentraland and Crypto Voxels. There's all kinds of really cool creative data there. And if you can think of putting kind of the marriage of Filecoin with these, I think it would be phenomenal to see these really cool data sets, A, be backed up, and B, maybe distributed in different ways, and potentially C, use different applications, right? So right now there's like one viewer for these virtual worlds, but potentially you can help make people make other viewers that can look at those worlds in different ways. I'll also mention NFTs. I think right now we have an amazing explosion in the Web3 space with all kinds of NFTs, where there's things like CryptoKitties and all kinds of things like that. And there's also a growing movement of putting art into NFTs. And so a lot of that art is visual. So there's a lot of galleries and so on that are popping up in things like Crypto Voxels and other things like that. So go take a look at that world, explore it, and then maybe you can help back up all of the NFTs and so on, because most of these that I've seen are addressed with IPFS. So all you have to do is just look at all those IPFS hashes and replicate them, and that's the beauty of IPFS. And yeah, I already mentioned blockchains, but you can take all of the blocks from other blockchains and just help distribute them through Filecoin. And maybe I think one that I'll end on that I think is both just visually stunning, naturally, and probably really exciting for people. Photos. Photos are one of the biggest, most important thing that the internet has helped transform. And they're just a whole set of archives of beautiful imagery that we've been collecting for the last 25 years. And a ton of these are open access. So I believe most of the stuff on Flickr, if not all of it, is Creative Commons. Some of it you can't redistribute in certain ways, so definitely check it. But a lot of Flickr just has tons of cool archives that you can help distribute. And one of the cool things is, beyond distribution, you could build applications, right? So you can think of different kind of neat applications you can build on top of this data. So step one is get the archive into something like Filecoin. And then step two is think of interesting and neat applications you might build on top of that data layer. And so again, a few of you might get together, bring the archive together into Filecoin, and then from there kind of split off and make your own applications that you care about. With that, that's it. So good luck to all the competitors. This is going to be a really exciting moment. I'll hand it back to Pooja. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Juan. That's awesome. Some really, really great ideas. And we have a request to add these to the list of data sets as well. So we'll definitely do that. And thank you so much for the presentation. All right. Well, I think if there are any other questions, please definitely bring these questions to the Filecoin Slack. We're happy to answer them there. And we'll also make sure that the questions get reflected into the FAQs. Because we are a bit over time, we're probably going to end it here. But just wanted to say thank you so much to the whole team for kicking off Slingshot today, and welcome to all of the competitors, and best of luck. We're excited that you'll be participating. See you very soon on the leaderboard.